Hello, Internet! Welcome to Renegades React, where today we are going to be watching a certain video by a certain channel called Game Theory.
I don't think I'm comfortable with this.
I'm not either,
Okay.
in all honesty. Here's the thing. Okay. Have you ever watched the show Deadliest Warrior?
Yep.
Okay. Long time ago, there was a show called Deadliest Warrior on Spike TV.
Back when Spike TV still existed.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Well, Spike TV, what they did was they got all these experts and they had them test
Experts.
No. Some of them were legit.
Some of them were legit, which is why I use it in quotes.
Some of them were not. Like some of them were legit, like the Mafia one.
Oh, that I believe.
Because here's the thing. He actually was the grandson of the original Joey Bonanno.
Yep.
I was like, okay, that's legit.
And it's
legit
like,
as shit.
This guy knows his stuff. Okay.
Yeah. So, okay.
Yeah.
But there were some experts that they got. Now, there was one they did. This actually would provide a lot of insight for this specific game theory. The game theory we're watching is who would win, samurai, knight, or Viking? Now, okay, there was one. It was between a samurai and a Viking. So, actually, Deadliest Warrior did the work for game theory on that. They brought in two Viking historians who were big dudes and could actually throw and use the equipment.
Oh, yeah.
And then they actually had two classic samurai historians who could use the equipment as well.
Oh, yeah.
Testing the equipment, they saw that they were very evenly matched.
Very much.
The Viking broadsword and the samurai katana were actually counterbalances to one another. But there were certain weapons that gave certain ones an edge. Case in point, the Viking and their double spear throw that they did on the battlefield was very effective. And they also showed that the one weapon the samurai held that was an alternate when they lost their katana, the kanabo, which is a giant war club, like a friggin' massive war club that's got like metal. It's pretty much a nightmare. Imagine this, if you will. It's a giant like baseball bat that's actually a foot longer and is covered in like metal studs all up and down.
Yep.
It was known as the shield breaker because the majority of shields back then were wooden.
Oh, yeah.
And they could crack wooden shields easily. It wasn't until the Bronze Age and the various Iron Ages and Metal Ages that things changed.
Well, I mean, once you could purify metal more effectively, then yeah, you could get enough metal together to work into a shield.
Yeah, which is like if imagine if the Vikings had like the Spartan shields. Had like the Spartan shields with the metal like that.
Yeah, that would have been something.
That would have been very impressive.
Yeah, whereas their shields were typically wood reinforced with metal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which honestly the samurai with the kanabo could tear through.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, as it showed, the Vikings lost. The Vikings actually lost that one. But it was very close. It was like 47% of the time the Vikings won, whereas 53% the samurai won. It was one of the closest ones.
Yeah.
The closest one I saw was actually the American Green Berets versus the Spetsnaz.
Oh,
the Russian Spetsnaz. They actually had former Spetsnaz and former Green Berets come in.
It's like, do we really have to reignite the Cold War, you guys?
No. They were actually very friendly about it. But due to the close combat weaponry, the Spetsnaz won because of the ballistics knife versus the shovel, which is really the only thing that the American Green Beret had in close quarters. They had the combat knife, but honestly, a lot of them preferred the shovel because of its distance.
Yeah, you had that little bit more reach.
Yeah,
and that can be the difference. Yeah.
Whereas the ballistic knife, just pop the knife out and shoot it at them.
Yeah, it's a knife bullet.
That was the decider, and it was a very close one. It was actually like 50.2% for Spetsnaz versus 49.8% for the Green Beret.
So
like
really, that's too close to call.
Yeah, like on a good day, like on any given day, it could go either way.
Yeah,
but anyway, that was a Deadliest Warrior. This is game theory. Let's see what Matt Pat has to say about this.
Yeah,
here we go.
So a knight, a Viking, and a samurai walk into a bar. I ducked.
Boo! Boo this man!
I figured we'd see that.
I can't believe we didn't even get through the
Hello,
credits
Internet.
Welcome
to
before I'm
Game
mad at
Theory,
Matt
the
Pat.
show where we
Wow.
treat old grade school playground debates with a seriousness usually reserved for postgraduate dissertations. But before we begin, quick shout out to Felipe Silva from the Notification Squad, the official first comment on the Bottle Flip episode. Thanks for being a loyal bell ringer. You're like the Red Cross at Christmas, except on YouTube all year long. And not for charity, unless you consider subscribing to this channel an act of charity, which isn't that far from the truth. Anyway, back to the subject of classic
fairly
playground
true.
debates.
Okay.
2 words, they rock. Pirate versus ninja, plants versus zombies, Superman versus Goku. Who doesn't love these classic what-if scenarios where you
Me.
smash your favorite fictional
You don't like
or
them?
not so
Not
fictional
particularly.
worlds together to award
Really?
someone the deadliest
Damn.
warrior of all-time gold star?
Mostly
Well,
because
Ubisoft
they're
took that to its
approached
logical
with,
extreme and made it into an entire video game.
a
For Honor, a game
very
seemingly
large amount of
created to
vitriol.
answer one age-old 3-way battle scenario.
You have to approach these
Knights
things with logic,
versus
not
Viking
anger.
versus samurai.
And
It's a
yeah,
game that's
nobody
been on
gets
my and many other gamers' watch lists since first debuting at E3 back in 2015. And with its Valentine's release right around the corner, I'm gearing up to break some hearts and shatter some skulls during this holiday of love. But which faction should you choose? Sure, I could just
Samurai.
choose the one that's most in line with my personality, but screw
Knight.
that, I'm here to win.
Yep.
And past episodes here have shown that knowledge of cultural history can help you win games. So between these 3 factions, one has to have the upper hand, right? Maybe the game is balanced, but history wasn't. So it got
No, it
my
wasn't.
theorist brain
No.
a-turning. Game mechanics aside, when it comes down to the nitty-gritty, who would reign supreme in an actual medieval battle royale? Savage Vikings, knights in shining armor, or the tenacious Japanese samurai? When you start to peel back the myths and legends of these warriors and actually look at the facts around them, a clear winner starts to emerge. So loyal theorist viewers, place your bets now. 3 warriors enter, only one
warrior leave.
will leave. Let's start by getting our bearings. Between Vikings, knights, and samurai, there's almost 2,000 years of human history to cover.
Yep.
And that is a ton of time. You can imagine it creates a few problems with comparing these 3 groups. For instance, it may be easy to say that a European knight clad entirely in Gothic plate armor would destroy a Viking, but that's kind of like saying 10 dudes with M16s could have won the Revolutionary War. Sure, the machine gun and the Revolutionary War are within 2,000 years of each other, but it's unfair to place super advanced technology into that sort of battle. So in an attempt to make a fair comparison all around,
Kick.
you have to
Oh,
take
you
into
could have. They
consideration
could have won right there.
You
but
coulda
came
kicked
to
and
him.
the
for
edge.
Honor's credit, the game selected 3 types of warriors that were active in the world at the same time. When you draw a Venn diagram of all the time periods samurai, Viking, and knights were active, you get one major area of overlap, the 11th century.
Yeah.
The year 1000, a time before steel plate, gunpowder, and even Twitter. Truly, these were the dark ages. Or maybe it was the age of enlightenment. Depends on how you look at Twitter. As such, in order to keep this battle fair, their 11th century armor, weaponry, and tactics are what they're going to be limited to in the arena. Now, let's meet our challenger.
Did he really have to use something from episode 2?
Coming in from Japan and standing at a whopping 5'3" they put the feud in feudal. It's the samurai. Hailing from the icy lands of Scandinavia with a height of 5'7" they take an arrow in the knee and keep on kicking.
Joyce
It's
Pilgrim.
the Viking. And finally, coming straight out of the European Dark Ages in style, standing at 5'8" tall, he's your man in shining
Enjoys
armor.
not dying.
The Knight!
Yep.
Wait. Hold your jock jams. Are you serious? 5'3" tall. A Viking is 5'7" on average? I'm taller than that. I thought these warriors were pillars of testosterone, drinking their power thirst and getting their swole
Power
on
thirst.
1x.
Now with
one at a
villagers'
time.
tears.
Especially Let's
Norse
just
'em.
fight. But looking at the scientific evidence and researching this episode, it just isn't true. Skeletal evidence reveals that due to poor nutrition back in ye olden times, humans were the same height, if not shorter, than what they are now. Sure, these warriors seem mythological in our minds, but that's because the mythology is all people really know. The only records we have about the Vikings, for instance, is the stuff that was written by people who had just had their villages ransacked by the guys, and also the Icelandic sagas. It's basically if our only records of American history were the tall tales of Paul Bunyan and his giant blue ox. So okay, none of our warriors are technically the
Sorry, I saw RuneScape there for a second and started laughing.
Vikings come from Scandinavia, and the fact that Vikings had to live in this frozen nightmare without electric blankets and central heating should be enough credential to give them their badass card. Since they lived in a place where food literally dies immediately, they stayed alive almost entirely by stealing from other people. They did this by striking hard and fast at vulnerable targets like monasteries and wealthy villages before fading into the foggy mists on their massive warships. Their weapons were generally garbage. Again,
this
that
also
whole
is true.
frozen tundra thing, with only the most basic of offenses: a bow and a shield on their back, a spear for throwing, and an axe in their belt, or if they were particularly well off, a sea axe, a sort of short sword knife hybrid that was perfect for up close encounters. But if they were minimal on the offensive front, they were practically nudists on the defensive front. Vikings, as if going for maximum machismo, were practically nothing for protection from either people or the threat of icicles to the crotch. The wealthiest Vikings wore hardened leather, but most just had quilted fabric. So one good shot from a bow and boom, you're done, son. Now, to For Honor's credit, the game gets all of this right. One look at the warlords, berserkers, and raiders, and you immediately see light armor, if at all, and rudimentary shields and axes. Even the Valkyrie is appropriate, as Viking culture required men, children, and women to know how to fight. So I gotta dock you a bit for the horned helmet. True loyal theorists know that those originated
horned helmet
in the
is
Bronze
bullshit.
Age back in 3300 BC, not Viking times in 1000 AD.
Correct.
Yeah, Skyrim got it wrong too, so you're in good company. So you're probably wondering
Skyrim's
why
not.
Vikings
Skyrim's
wear
its own
the equivalent
universe.
of tissue paper. Sounds like
Well,
a bad idea
this
for a
is as
society
well.
built
This
around
is
fighting
not
and
set on
fighting,
Earth.
right? Well,
Right,
it's actually for two reasons. One, they got around by boat all the time, and you don't want to go overboard in iron. Anchors away! Also, iron rusts into powder in the presence of salt water, so not the best idea. Two, wearing light armor allowed them to have maximum mobility. When you're jumping off
another
a ship to
thing
raid
is
a
they didn't
lightly
have
guarded
access
town, you don't want
to
be weighed down by
iron,
unnecessary armor,
typically.
even if you've been keeping up with
They
legend.
very rarely
It's
had
funny,
access
we
to
think
a lot of iron.
Vikings as slow, hulking tanks, but in actuality, speed and intimidation were their best friends. If they were pro StarCraft players, they'd exclusively use cheese and all-in tactics. The risk here, though, of course, is that if they ran into someone who knew what they were doing, didn't panic, and was more well-equipped and trained, well, they would easily crumble. And that, honestly, is why the Vikings would lose to both the samurai and the knights. It's not even worth carrying to the end of the episode. These guys are dead as soon as they hit the battlefield. Let's play it out. The Viking sprints into the arena, chest bared, in a daring display of bravery, and ooh, there's the samurai arrow in the back. Oh, and that's the knight's blade to the side. The Viking makes one last-ditch effort swinging his axe, but it's rejected. His rudimentary armaments are no match for the finely crafted weaponry of the knight and the samurai. Some armor beats no armor, bro. No amount of bravery and pectoral bulk can combat a lack of equipment. You can shout as much as you like, berserkers, but it ain't gonna stop a knight's arrow into your chest, or a
Well, that's one thing about the game. There is no class that. Well, okay, there is.
The knights and the samurai.
Okay, there is a perk for you to use arrows, but there's none that have it like as a main.
Vulnerable to raiding cultures like the Vikings, and this shaped the face of war in Europe for centuries. Huge castles became the norm because they offered protection from the poorly equipped raiding parties. A group of Vikings coming for your stuff? Well, just haul butt into your castle, close the doors, and wait for them to leave. What are they gonna do? Flex their pectorals intimidatingly at the front gate, hoping that it crumbles in fear? I don't think so. And with castles came knights, mounted warriors with heavy offense and defense. Offensively in the 11th century, knights were all about swords and spears, or more accurately, long swords and polearms. Polearms would allow you to attack others from horseback fairly easily easily without dismounting. And off-the-horse longswords were perfect for melee, heavy enough to daze someone if you knocked him in the helmet, but also able to penetrate armor if you stabbed with the tip. Look no further than the Warden class of For Honor for some really accurate knight weaponry. But for as correct as the weapon is, just ignore his armor, because what the knights wear in For Honor is a bit too modern for our battle royale today.
That is true.
Is plate armor, iron and steel plates forming a barrier around the body. And while partial plate armor was used by the ancient Greeks and Romans, it became much less popular in the 11th century because it was really hard to make and cost some serious cash.
Yes,
is that
very
full
correct.
plate armor? So 300 BC. It wouldn't become popular again until the late 13th century, meaning it would be appropriate for Honor, but is off the table for our 11th century battle. Instead, knights of the 11th century wore the hauberk, a shirt made out of rings of iron linked together that could protect your major organs from everything that wasn't a direct shot from a longbow. Combined with full helmets, a horse that lets you outmaneuver any threat, and a heavy shield, knights were leagues beyond Vikings. Which finally brings us across the world to Japan, to a time before anime body pillows and automatic toilets, when the land was ruled by lords vying for power over each other. We think of samurai as being these honorable, katana-brandishing master duelists, but in the 11th century, this wasn't the case at all. During the early Heian period in Japan, these warriors were among some of the wealthiest members of their respective clans, and were mostly used by the emperor to squash rebellions by the peasants. They were the 1%, just, instead of power suits and expensive haircuts, they sported amazing armor and would shoot you in the gut with an arrow if you protested. Like the knights, early samurai were master practitioners of Kyudo, the art of mounted archery. While they did later evolve into other skills like swordplay with a katana, deadly ranged combat is where they shined most in these early days. And not just archery on horseback. Their equipment was simple.
They were able to,
and most importantly, a horse. Defensively,
they were actually able to compete with the Mongols.
Among the wealthiest people in Japan, and as a result, they had all the best toys. They were basically the kids who grew up having a Power Wheels in every game system. Whereas Vikings had padded cloth and knights had ring mail, samurai had oyuroi, forged from metal plates laced together with hardened leather and covered with lacquer to keep them from rusting. These things were some of the best armor in the world. And while the knights' hauberks covered just their torsos, samurai had huge helmets, masks, sleeves, and greaves. This stuff was rugged, strong, and best of all, light. It hardly impacted their ability to move freely. Of course, it took an immense amount of skill to make it and was incredibly expensive, but remember, samurai made it rain, so no worries for them there. In short, their motto was to keep your opponent at a distance, riddle them with arrows, and overpower them with your excessive bank accounts. If Batman were a medieval warrior, he'd be a samurai. Zipping around on his Batmobile horse and smacking villains in the face with his wads of cash.
You think you have a chance against me? I'm rich. I'm Samurai Batman.
A samurai's weakness, though? Close combat. Sure, once they got equipped with a katana in later eras, like you see in For Honor, they were fine. But in the 11th century, they were incredibly susceptible to close-ranged combat. So, to counter this, they usually had an entourage of people equipped with polearms and swords to keep them protected from enemies just running up and taking down their horse. Money, not only buying you the coolest toys, but also buying you friends to protect you on the fields of battle. So, there you have it. 3 classes of warriors, 3 possible victors in our hypothetical battle For Honor. Well, actually 2, because the Vikings are clearly outmatched. So, who wins? Knights or samurai?
I'd say samurai.
Of another great YouTube channel, it's time for a death battle.
Really?
Let the battle begin. Here come both our challengers now, riding into the arena. Knights and samurai, both mounted warriors, so this is to be expected. And oh, there goes the knight's horse, struck with a samurai's arrow. He goes down hard. The reach of that polearm just can't match the distance the samurai can fire his bow. But can the knight recover? He's reaching, trying to take down the samurai's horse, but that samurai is just too mobile. And there's the killing blow. That chainmail hauberk's just not strong enough to repel the samurai's repeated arrow volley atop his horse. Were we later in history, with the knights equipped with armor like you see in For Honor, the samurai's arrow volley would have had a difficult time penetrating the heavy mail. But remember, our knights only have their hauberks. Sturdy armor to be sure, but weak to arrows, especially a repeated arrow volley coming from horseback. Had this battle been able to go to melee combat, the results might have been different, but based on the period appropriate armor, battle tactics, and weaponry, in the end, the samurai in an unexpected twist, takes the day. And just because I know that you're wondering it, the same would be true in the fictional scenario presented in For Honor. The strength and increased mobility of the samurai's armor and the addition of melee weapons would eventually overwhelm the slower, more tank-like knights. But when you truly stop to look at these victories, they're not for the reasons that you would have expected. In the end, it doesn't really come down to tactics, formations, strongholds, or training. It comes down to one weapon that you don't normally think about on the fields of war: money.
Oh, that's the one I always think.
Yeah.
For stronger,
Money
longer
wins
weapons,
wars.
money enough to live on so that you can go out and learn ridiculous skills like archery on horseback. Sure, money may not buy happiness, but it will buy you a pile of armaments. So the moral of today's story is this: when you're in a war, money truly is the greatest weapon of all. But hey, that's just a theory. A game
summarize it for you.
theory.
Boo!
Thanks for watching. So knowing that, which class will you choose? Click on one of the 3 options to cast your vote: Knight, Viking, or Samurai. We'll see if my historical analysis actually swayed some of you. You know, funny enough, in an ironic twist, I think based on the story of For Honor, the Samurai are supposed to be the underdogs. Oh, the other 2 factions have a big surprise coming their way. Anyway, a special thanks to Moose Knuckle, Cartoons, and my buddy, Gerard the Completionist, for letting me use their battle tactics footage throughout this video.
Cartoons,
Each of these guys
plural.
actually covered a different one
Gerard
of
the
the factions, so if
Completionist.
you're interested in more, click on your favorites. And lastly, one final thank you to Ubisoft for making this video possible. Perhaps I too one day will be able to rise to the ranks of the noble samurai. I just
Samurai
like it.
Jack.
Those guys were stacked. Anyway, see you all next week for the epic conclusion to the Gaster theory. Have a great week. So
All right.
Okay.
So I think his analysis is pretty fair.
I think so too.
Chainmail very weak to arrows,
Yeah.
and at the time the samurai were archers
Yes.
specifically.
Yeah. They hadn't yet. They hadn't yet. They hadn't yet really perfected the craftsmanship of the katana
Right.
for larger production.
Yeah. Now the Vikings relied specifically on hit and run tactics.
Yeah.
So therefore, you throw a Viking into an area 1-on-1 with prepared opponents, he's done. Because terror and hit and run tactics. You go in, you raid, you leave before anybody can respond.
Yeah.
You know, which is just the standard. Also, they didn't have iron. Most of the iron that they had was captured, was stuff that they found.
Yeah.
Also, if I'm remembering correctly, there were a few Viking swords made, like really good quality Viking swords.
Yeah.
But they were so rare. And I mean, they just didn't have access to iron.
Well,
enough
yeah,
to do anything with.
Well, that's the biggest factor.
Exactly.
I mean, when you don't have access to the most important thing in terms of
when you don't have access to the best materials, you're kind of screwed.
Well, it's just like, okay, the biggest paradigm shifts in terms of warfare. You know, the modern one, it's technology.
Oh yeah.
Technology, the growth in technology, you know, drone strikes, you know, artillery strikes from automated turrets and all that.
You know, global positioning guidance systems.
Hacking.
Strikes. Yeah.
Hacking.
But really, like, you know, you want to look at the big ones.
Gunpowder.
Gunpowder is a big one. Metalwork.
Yeah, steel.
You know,
Yeah, steel.
Steel and such.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like that. I mean, that's the big thing. In, you know, 11th century, which is the one time all of these guys were active. Yeah, I think he got most of it right.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, the knights just didn't have access to range. I mean, a polearm's only gonna. You still have to be pretty close to use a polearm.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, range is going to outdo melee.
Range is big, but there's one thing. Okay, see, he made it very clear. This is real world, not in the world of For Honor.
Right.
In the world of For Honor, there is no main class that is just an archer. There is a perk you can get with certain classes of samurai
that lets you have secondary.
Yeah, secondary, a bow and arrow, and it does some pretty good damage.
Yeah,
and
the best part is it does it from over there.
Yeah, it can do it from a distance. So actually, that actually happened to me in a match. I was actually dueling somebody, and it was a very good duel. We were both down to low health, and I go and actually I get a shield break on the guy, and then up on a bridge behind me, someone shot me with an arrow and killed me right as I was about to land the killing blow. And I was just like, yeah, what the? And then all of a sudden I see that guy running away. I'm like, you son of a bitch! How could you do that? And I was just like, dang it, come on, man. But it happens.
Yeah, and another part of it is, if gunpowder had come into play, once gunpowder comes into play, plate armor is obsolete.
Yeah,
because it'll just punch right through.
Yeah, cause they showed that with knights versus pirates.
Yes,
knights versus pirates, because pirates had flintlock pistols, and not only that, well, they actually tested it. Flintlock pistols, about 80-90% of the time, didn't pierce plate armor, but the blunderbuss did.
Yes,
the blunderbuss was the killer.
That heavy powder load.
That heavy powder load and loading in pretty much whatever the hell you want.
Oh yeah,
does
you can get it done.
Serious damage. Holy shit. But yeah, Deadliest Warrior. That was a fun show way back when, and you see, okay, what MatPat did was he made it evidently clear this is the real world, and this is only during the times where all three groups
were active.
Which is the 11th century, 1000, around the time of the Dark Ages.
Which, that limitation, I think, is very, very important.
It is. It's very important to note that.
Although, I do feel like another solid limitation would be at the height of their technological prowess.
Yeah.
Because then you get some different results.
Oh, yeah.
The Vikings, their technology wouldn't advance too much more.
Yeah, the Viking era was done not too long after the 11th century.
Yeah, because the Vikings, they're not out doing science.
No.
They're out pillaging and plundering.
Yeah.
They couldn't set up terribly fortified locations. They certainly didn't have mining operations.
Nope.
So, yeah, their technological development is, what can we steal? And as your enemies get better technology, stealing it becomes harder.
Yeah, the thing about it is the Vikings, for the most part, would because of natural barriers, would be protected from a lot of sieges because they're used to that terrain.
It's true.
So if you went into Viking territory,
you'd have to attack from the water.
Yeah.
What are these guys good at? They're good at attacking from the water.
Yeah, they have ships.
What are they going to be good at stopping? Attacking from the water. They're going to know exactly what to do.
Well,
and you're probably going to be sailing into unfamiliar territory. So, reef, dead.
Yeah. Well, one thing also, the samurai were also really good at defending on the water because they fended off the Mongols twice.
Oh yeah.
They fended off the Mongols on the water and on the land twice.
It's true.
The first time they had a typhoon to help them.
Well, yeah.
The second time they fended them off, and then the typhoon finished the job.
Yeah.
That goes without saying.
But now the more interesting fight is samurai at peak technological prowess. So, katana, full
Edo period.
Yes.
Like full Edo period where the samurai were like full on like had the full plate armor like maxed out.
Yep.
The katana full blast, the kanabo, everything.
Yeah.
Versus the full
so really
plate armor
the
knight.
For Honor scenario.
Yeah, the For Honor scenario and the For Honor knight.
Yeah.
As well.
So that said though, this is one of the cases where I feel like his analysis is very sound.
I think so too.
I have no major issues with this.
I don't either.
And I mean, okay. I'm going to go ahead and say this again.
Go ahead.
I don't hate MatPat, but if your theory can't stand up to scrutiny, it needs to be reworked.
Yeah.
And in a lot of cases, I can find a fair number of faults with Matt Pat's theories. This one, solid.
This one is solid.
I'm okay with it.
I give it to him as well.
Yeah.
It's a solid theory.
I mean, and, you're a student of history.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So really, you've got more to say on the subject than I do.
Well, yeah.
You and Micah both would have way more to say on this than I do.
Well, I know who Micah would pick just because of how much he loves
the
lore of Vikings.
But I think that Micah also knows that technologically, you go to the 11th century and you have this fight, they lose.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
On a battlefield, they lose. Because the Vikings, yeah, as you put it, the Vikings were stick and move.
Yeah,
They
guerrilla tactics.
Yeah.
You come in, you hit, you take what you want, and you get the
hell
out.
Yeah,
before anybody can
reinforcements
mount a
arrive.
resistance.
Yeah. But Samurai and Knight, I think, yeah, Matt Pat has it right. Those two are the
threats.
the biggest
And
threats.
Yeah, range counters, chainmail.
Yeah.
Done.
So yeah,
that's the ball game.
All right. So anyway, what did you all think of this? Did you all think that Matt Pat's theory held water? Be honestly, let us know. I mean, let us know who you think would win. And also,
let us know who you think would win in the For Honor scenario.
Yeah, let us know who you think would win there.
I think again the Vikings are kind of screwed.
Yeah, I think so too. But
I don't know. And another thing is, people think that plate mail is like, oh, plate mail will slow you down. Okay, number one, you can still move pretty well in plate mail.
Yeah, you can.
Surprisingly. Number two, interestingly enough, swimming in plate mail, not that bad.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Surprisingly enough.
Well, there you go.
So, I mean, plate mail you had to be able to move in it, because it doesn't matter how well defended you are. If you can't move, you're dead.
This is true.
So you had to be able to move in it.
Yeah, and you see, that's the thing about knights. Knights were seen as these tanks that, that were impregnable until gunpowder came along. The truth is, knight. There were ways to fight knights.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, the samurai had, in terms of mobility, the samurai had the advantage. I feel. In terms of technological, technologically advanced.
Like if you look at the armor,
yeah,
and I mean horses notwithstanding, because a horse is a horse.
Yeah,
of course.
I'm a horse. Nay.
Yeah, Mr. Ed reference.
Yeah,
I went there. What of it? But yeah, mobility wise in the armor. Knight's armor's not as bad as people think it is.
No. It's
anyway.
not. All right, so this was Matt Pat's game theory. Who would win, Samurai Knight or Viking? Let us know who you think would win. Also, let us know in the comment section down below. Who you'd pick in the For Honor scenario.
Or if you play For Honor.
Or if you play For Honor as well. Yeah, let us know who you play as.
Yeah.
Also, don't forget to check out the original video in the description down below as well. Let Matt Pat know where you came from and who sent you. Also, don't forget to check out our Discord, check out our merchandise, and also don't forget to check out our Patreon as well.
Isn't that still so weird to say that we have merchandise?
Not really.
I feel weird saying that.
Well,
it's weird.
Well, yeah, it's true. Okay, but anyway, thank you all so much for tuning in. I'm Nate.
I'm Ben.
We will see you later, Internet. Peace out.